madly. Don't you love her ways? Tell me what you say. Don't you love her madly? Wanna be her daddy? Don't you love her face? Don't you love her as she's walking out the door? Like she did 1,000 times before. Don't you love her ways? Tell me what you say. Don't you love her as she's walking out the door?
Okay, today I'm going to be covering in pre-calculus piecewise functions. So this is kind of a tricky one for students to wrap their heads around sometimes. So let me see if I can break it down nice and easy for you. If I'm looking at this piecewise function over here, where I'm taking f of x, and I'm not going to take the whole thing, which is why it's called like piecewise, because it's really you're just using a piece of it. If I take the piece where x is less than 0 or equal to 0, and I graph that, I'm just taking, it would be a parabola, okay? F of x equals x squared. So I'm just taking that piece of it where it's less than 0, all right? That's the only piece I'm taking. So I'm going to put it over here, and I'm just going to graph it right in there. So it starts out at 0, and it's the half of a parabola going up and to the left. So it's like that, okay? So that's the first piece. The second piece is the f of x equals x, which is this part. Okay, so it's really two things. It's f of x equals x squared and f of x having problems. F of x equals x. So it's those two things put together. Now the part with the x is only going to be where x is greater than 0. So that one's a line, okay? This is the graph, y equals x, or f of x equals x. So I'm only taking that piece of it, and I'm going to put it on the other part of my graph over here. All right, so it's going to start, I'll even do a different color just this one time so you can see it. So it's here, more technical difficulties. Starts here and goes up, okay? So it's those two things put together is a piecewise function, okay? And that's what we're going to be doing this whole section. Is I'm just going to be taking each piece and graphing each one, according to the, the restrictions on it, okay? So it's a piece of several different pieces of equations put together, okay? So that's what we're doing here. So the first one is this over here, okay? If I had f of x equals x, where x is less than or equal to 2, what would that look like? Well, if I plugged in, so I'm looking at this piece right here. So y equals x, that's a diagonal line going up and to the right. Okay, and if I plug in 2, that means it's going to go up to 2, all right? It's going to start here. It's a diagonal line with a slope of -1, just going like that, okay? Of course, I messed it up. Let me fix that. Because it goes to 2, it doesn't go to 0. I put the line in the wrong spot here. So it goes x is 2. Sorry about that. And then goes this way, okay? So if I had plugged in 2 for x, that's where it stops, okay? Right here. Because it says it goes up until x is 2. But, I'm not going to use any values where x is greater than 2. Okay. Now that I already made my first mistake. Next one, f of x equals 2. That's what this one is. I should use blue. F of x equals 2, and this is where x is between 2 and 4. Okay, that's my restriction over on the side here. F of x equals 2, where x is between 2 and 4. So y equals 2, that's just a horizontal line, okay? So it's going to go here, where it's between 2 and, was it 4? Yes, Okay, so that's horizontal line. Not a perfect one, but as good as it's going to be at the moment. Okay. And the third piece is where y, or f of x, equals negative x plus 6, where x is greater than 4. So if I plugged in 4 for a moment here, I would get negative 4 plus 6 is 2. So this is starting at 2, all right, where y is 2. And then it's going to go down. It has a slope of negative 1, okay? So it's starting here at 2. And it's going down with a slope of negative 1. So it's going to hit 0, 6, because that's the y, the x-intercept there. Plug in 0 for x, you get 6. So it goes that way, okay? All right, so it's got all solid dots because these are all less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. All right, we'll deal with the open dots in a little bit. But that's what that looks like, okay? It's got 3 different pieces. That's probably about as more or less complicated as they get, unless you want to talk about, parabolas, which we'll get into some, but this is the idea, okay? Next one. So now we're going to graph the piecewise function. And there's a parabola for you in the second part. So the first one is y equals 2x plus 1. Okay, and this is where x is less than negative 1. So let's see, if I plug in negative 1, I get 2 times negative 1 plus 1 is 2. Negative 2, and negative 2 plus positive 1 is negative 1. So it's going to be y is negative 1 when x is negative 1. So negative 1, negative 1. It's going to be my dot. It'll be here. And then this has a slope of 2. So it's going to be going down. I'm really not going to worry too much about the slope and things. They're just a rough estimate of where the line is going at this point is fine. Okay. Now the other part is going to be y equals x squared plus 2. And this is where x is greater than 1. So this is going to be an open dot on that one. All right. So if for a moment I plug in negative 1 in there in this equation, the x squared plus 2, that's going to be positive 1, and 1 plus 2 is 3. So this is actually going to start at 3 when x is negative 1. Should be here. I'm putting an open dot here. Okay. Opened up because it's just less than. Now it's going to be a half a parabola, okay? And it's going to be a regular parabola, except it's going to be up 2 units because it's got the plus 2. It's a transformation up 2 units on the upside. So I'm just going to make it, and it's going to hit 2. So I'm going to go like this, and it goes up like that. And there's the rest of that function, all right? And that's it, okay? That's it for that one. So that's it. It's not so bad when you're graphing them. Next one. If I have f of x equals negative 1 half x minus 6, and this is where x is less than negative 4. So this has a y-intercept of negative 6. If I plug in negative 4 for a moment, let's see where that brings me. So if I have negative 1 half times negative 4 minus 6, and I do out the math here, I get half of 4 is 2, so that's 2 minus 6 is negative 4. So when x is negative 4, y is negative 4. Which means I'm going to have a open dot, solid dot at negative 4, negative 4. All right, and then it has a slope of negative 1 half, which will go up and to the left. Okay, let's see, where will it hit the y-axis, or the x-axis, excuse me. So that would be at negative 12. So I'd like to know where it hits the y-axis. It's going to hit it at 12, I'll tell you, but let me show you how I knew that. Because I know it's going to go like up this way. I just got to figure out where it hits the x-axis, since I would like to make this a semi-decent graph. So if I just took that and set it equal to 0, like I did right here, and then solve it, I can find out where it hits the x-axis. So I get that, and then I multiply by -2, and there's where I get my -12, okay? So that's where x equals 0, or y equals 0, excuse me. So I'm going to make my diagonal line going up here, so it hits that, and I'm all set now on that part. Okay, y equals x plus 5, that's an easy one. And this should be -4 over here, not +4. That's a typo. So this is going to have a positive slope of 1, and I'm starting at -4. And I can figure out where to start on my graph here. So if I have -4 plus 5, that's actually 1, okay? So that's -4, 1, which is about here, and it's going to be an open dot because it's just greater than, okay? And then it's going to have a slope of 1 going up and to the right, okay? Up 1, right 1, up 1, right 1. It's hitting 5 on the x-axis because if I add, it's got a y-intercept of 5, okay? And that is the curve that I'm looking for, or the two lines put together. All right, number 3, why don't you try this one? I want you to graph y equals 2x plus 3, where x is less than or equal to 1. I want you to graph the line f of x equals -x plus 4, where x is greater than 1. Okay. Next one, I'm going to do number 4. All right, so 2 parts, a line and a parabola. So the line goes from x equals -4. Maybe I should draw like this. So this is where it's going to go from -4 up to x equals 0, which is really the y-axis, okay? So it's going to be between there and there, where it's got a y-intercept of 1 and a slope of 2. Change colors here, so it's going to y-intercept of 1, and it's going to be an open dot there. And then a slope of 2. So it's going to hit -1/2 on my x-axis, like that. And it's going to go all the way down here. Should make it longer. Okay, down to there. It's going to be another solid dot. This will actually go to -7. If you were to punch in the numbers for -4 on the x-axis, if I plug in -4, I get -8. -8 plus 1 is -7. So that's what this point is, -4, -7. Okay, so I got that piece of it done now. And now I'm looking at the other piece, which is the parabola, y equals x squared plus 1. So this is like a regular kind of parabola. This is where x is greater than 0 or equal to 0. So it's going to be a solid dot there. Get a good color. I'm going to do blue, which means at 1, at 0 for x, which will give me this line, it's going to be right on there. It's going to hit that spot, and then it's going to be a half a parabola going up and to the right. Okay. And that's it, all right? You got the 2 pieces. One's a line, and the other is a parabola, half a parabola, okay? All right, so that's number 4. Number 5, a little bit more interesting, or a little different on this one. So hopefully you remember a little bit about your square root functions. You know, those look like a half a parabola kind of thing, you know, where you just start here and they'll go this way. Most of them go that way if the x is positive. If the x is negative, it's going to be the same kind of thing, except it'll go to the left, okay? Which means with this one, the x is negative, so that's going to be a going to the left variety. The bottom one, x is positive, so it's going to be going to the right variety, okay? And then the question is you know, where does it start? So this one, the top, let's do the top one first, which is probably a little harder since x is negative. This is where x is less than 0, so that's the line where x equals 0, so it's going to be on that side. I'm looking over here, okay? Those are the numbers where x is less than 0. So if I plug in 0 for x, that'll get me on the y-axis. And if I plug in 0 for x, I get 3 for y. So x is 0, y is 3. So that would be here, and it's an open dot right on the y-axis. And then this is the negative variety. I'm not going to make too much of a big deal about, all the values on that one. It's just a curve going up and to the right. The other one, make the other one red. Is the same idea. This is x is greater than or equal to 0, which means it'll be a solid dot when I graph it. And once again, if I plug in 0 for x, I get y being 3, because 9 plus 0 is 9, square root of 9 is 3. Okay, so this is going to be right here, and then it's going to be a half a parabola going to the right, because x is positive. Okay, and that's what you get. That's your piecewise function there. Number 6. So the top one's a parabola, bottom one's a line. Maybe I'll do the line first. Those are nice and easy. So, if you don't like it written that way, you can always rewrite it. This is like f of x equals negative x plus 3. That's the same thing, right? Y-intercept of 3, slope of negative 1. Now, this is only for x is greater than or equal to 1. So let me plug in 1 and see where it lands. If I plug in 1, I get negative 1 plus 3, which is 2. So when x is 1, y is 2, which is putting me up here with the open dot. Okay, and then it's just got a slope of negative 1, so it's going down 1, right 1, down 1, right 1. So I'm going to go right this way, and it should hit 3 on the x-axis. Okay, so there's the first part. Nice. We did the easy part first. Now let's do the x squared minus 1. And this is where x is between 1 and negative 1. So it's from here to here on my graph. Okay. And it's a parabola, right? It's got a f of x equals x squared. So let me plug in 1 here. If I go 1, this is where x is 1. What will y be? Well, 1 squared is 1, 1 minus 1 is 0. All right, and if I plug in negative 1 for x, it'll actually be the same thing, because negative 1 in parentheses squared is also 1, 1 minus 1 is 0. So if I plug in 2, because 2 is between, wait, no, I should plug in 0, because 0 is between 1 and negative 1. I plug in 0, then I get 0 squared minus 1, which is negative 1. So those are 3 points, and it's going to be with my curve. So it's going to start over here. That's a solid dot. This one's an open dot. Sorry, this one should be an open dot because up on my restrictions here, it's x is less than 1. Over here on the other side, though, at the negative 1, that will be a solid dot. And then down here, it's just going to be this half of a parabola, which is actually going to look kind of like a circle. But it's a parabola. It just goes like that. Okay, and there is my piecewise function. Okay. All right, I think I got 2 more here. Next one, 3 pieces. So 1 minus x. If I'm looking at that, this one goes between negative 1 and 0 on my x-axis. So that's from here to here. All right, so if I plug in those 2 numbers, if I plug in negative 1 and 0 for x, let's see what we get for y. Negative 1 minus negative 1 is same as 2. And if I plug in the other one, 0, 1 minus 0 is 1. So there's a couple of points for me to work with. First one is a solid point with a negative 1, 2. here. This is a linear equation, so it's going to be 0, 1 is an open dot right there. So it goes between there and here. There's the first piece. Second piece is y equals 5, so that is just a horizontal line going between 0 and 1. So go to here. So this is just a horizontal line. Is it solid dots? The 1 is an open dot. This is a solid dot between there and there. And the last one is from 1 to 3, which will only go up to here. And this is where y equals negative x plus 2. So if I plug in the 1, I get negative 1, change colors, plus 2. Negative 1 plus 2 will give me 1. So negative 1, 1, this is my x, here's my y. And if I plug in 3, I get negative 3 plus 2 is 1. So there's my, I made a mistake here. Oh, negative 3, positive 3. 3 plus 2 is not that. Okay, so you know what? Forget about the second point. I'm starting here. It's got a slope of negative 1, which means it's just going down 1, right 1. Down 1, right 1. Okay? It's just going down like that, except it's going to stop at 3. So I went too far. Let me fix that. So it's stopping at that orange line. Oh, that wasn't what I thought. Wrong pen. So it's going down 1, right 1, and it's stopping here. Okay? So that's my piecewise function. And here comes the last one. So this one, the top one, let's do the top one first. This is where f of x equals x squared plus 3, where x is less than or equal to negative 2. So let me make a small table here. I got to get a couple points. I want definitely negative 2 for x. And I'd also like to, so if I plug in negative 2, that's in squared becomes positive 4. 4 plus 3 is 7. Okay, and let's say I plug in a negative 3, which is also less than that. Negative 3 squared is positive 9. 9 plus 3 is 12. So that's going to get pretty big pretty quick. So it's going upwards on the left side, and this is from negative 2 up. So from negative 2, 7 is here. This is going to be just a upwards quick parabola going that way, all right? Real fast going up. The second part, y equals negative x squared plus 5x plus 6. This one, I'm going to do it in two pieces. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in negative 2, because that's where it starts, okay? So if I plug in negative 2 squared plus 5 times negative 2 plus 6, I get 4. 4 plus negative 10 plus 6 is actually going to be 0. Except I missed this double negative sign here, so that's negative 4, which gives me negative 8. Okay, so that's when x is negative 2, it's going to be an open dot. So from negative 2, 8. So there's my first point, all right? And the other thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to factor it, okay? So let me pull out an x here, or excuse me, a negative. If I pull out a negative, then I'm left with x squared minus 5x minus 6. And if I factor that, this will give me the zeros, which is where the parabola crosses the x-axis, okay? That's what zeros are. So let's see, things that multiply to negative 6 and add up to negative 5. Oh, that's minus 6 and plus 1. Okay, so that means it crosses the x-axis at x equals 6 and x equals negative 1, right, where the zeros go. So I'm not going to worry too much about the vertex, but I know it hits the y-axis at 6 because it has the plus 6 there. So this goes up here like this. Oops, wait, it should hit at -1, so let me make it hit at -1. Goes up, hits at 6. Still can't do this quite right. Up, hits at 6, and then comes back down somewhere and hits at positive, hits the x-axis at +6. So something like that. All right. So that's my piecewise function with the green and the purple combined. And that is my last problem. And thanks for watching. And I'm going to close it out with a little bit more music. Have a great night.